Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I am so excited about this conversation. I feel like I haven't seen
I
your
know.
face in a while. So this is so great and just going to
It's
use it as an opportunity to kind of catch up with you.
yes, perfect.
Yeah. So this is Shannon Siriano. She is the founder and entrepreneurial boss babe of Rebelle Con, which is a entrepreneurial event organization that had specialized in doing conferences. They've been around for about 4 years now, three and a half. And so, yeah, she's amazing. And I'm going to let her take it from here and kind of tell you her story and background and how she got to where she is now.
Yay. Well, I won't go all the way back because that wowould be a very long story. But I think, Sarah, how you and I met was when I had boho, maybe?
Yes.
So I graduated with a degree in marketing. I worked a few different jobs in operations and marketing, and management and leadership. And then I decided to open my first business, which was an indoor cycling studio. And this was right at the beginning of the boutique fitness craze. So at the time, there was not other boutique fitness studios other than yoga studios and one bar studio in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I live. And so it felt at the time, it felt like this huge gamble of like, will people in Richmond, which is a mid-sized market, even go with this model, which now it seems so silly. We know that people do, but at the time it was like, oh my gosh, will people actually pay for a class when they can get unlimited classes at the gym? So that was kind of where my health crisis began. I struggled with my health as every person does. But my health crisis came when I suffered from postpartum depression after my first baby was born. So on the outside, I looked very healthy, right? I owned a fitness business. I had this great exercise regimen, but I was suffering from a mental health illness that I had forever, that was totally untreated and still was untreated after I had my baby. So I was struggling for over a year before I actually did anything to intervene. And that was where Sarah and I really connected as you were beginning your health coaching journey. But I always kind of had this like entrepreneurial spirit. So even though I ended up selling my portion of the fitness studio, I knew I still wanted to be in the space and I started business coaching. And then while I was coaching, I was meeting all these amazing people, particularly women, business owners, and that was the inspiration for the first Rebelle Con. So, the first conference we ever had, we decided we were going to make it about the personal, not the professional side of being a business owner. And since then, we have grown and adapted. So we still do have conferences. They are virtual now, obviously. Thank you, COVID. But that's still a core component of what we do, which is gathering people together, sharing the stories of inspirational leaders. We've expanded beyond serving just entrepreneurs. We really serve women everywhere that just want to live on their own terms. That's obviously pretty foundational to an entrepreneur's desire, right? Like, I want to be my own boss and do things my own way. But there's women out there that don't necessarily want to be a business owner, but also want to live those values. We also have a community, so a membership that you can join and be a participant in these types of conversations about what does it mean to live life on your own terms? What does it mean to do things your own way, whether that's in your health, in your finances, in what you do for work, all connected. And then the last piece of what we do is we help women connect and support one another. So we launched last year our Swell program, which is essentially our way of setting you up with your wolf pack. And what I mean by your wolf pack is a core group, small group of people that you meet with regularly that are just going to be your like cheerleaders, your sounding board, your place to go when you want to work through your thing. And I'm super proud of it because you can talk about wellness in a lot of different ways. And I think often we leave out that part of like community and support. And that's really like my jam and what I do.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad you really highlighted that towards the end. And it was definitely something I want to discuss is the power of community, because you're right. So many people don't think about that when it comes to wellness. And, if we had told our ancestors that, they would probably look at us like we were crazy, because it was probably the number one thing that they had that kind of influenced their well-being, right? So we will get into that and especially go deeper into Rebelle Con, but there's some stuff that I want to unpack with your personal health journey. The first of it being, I thought it was interesting that you kind of mentioned the downside of your health during when you owned a fitness studio, which you wouldn't really think about, because you would think about people very immersed in that industry living their healthiest lives, right? No.
Yeah.
And I want you to go into both the physical and the mental, because, to be completely honest, like postpartum depression is something that I don't know a lot about. I don't think it's talked enough about. And I know you have been so great using your platform to talk about it, because the more we talk about things like this, the less taboo there will be surrounding it. So go into both the like mental and physical side of that for me.
Yeah. Well, I never learned how to manage stress, right? Ever in my life. Like that
Mm,
wasn't a thing that anybody ever talked about. So I was always this like overperforming, high achieving, like go till you can't go anymore. And like sadly the fitness industry like thrives on people like that, right? Like you if you're like really intense and you love working out and you just like really want to like burn calories and get fit like every single day, like probably you also have challenges with like this striving thing. And so, right, like
yes, type it.
teaching 4 really intense cardio fitness classes every week while I was pregnant, I don't know that people would look at that and be like, wow, she's really investing in her wellness. Sadly, they do. They look at it and they're like, oh my God, she's so amazing. Like, how can she be working out so hard? And so you get that external validation of like what you're doing is healthy, but it really
Yes.
wasn't. And so I wasn't managing my stress during that time. I was essentially avoiding having to deal with it by making myself really busy, part of that being this really intense fitness regimen and neglecting all of the other pieces of my health. And postpartum depression isn't something that people talk about. It's kind of this thing of like, oh well, you don't want to like talk about it too much because then you might scare people and then they might like be stressed about it. And it's like, no, like postpartum depression is a very common thing that has very specific warning signs that if
Yeah.
you know what they are, you can look out for them and you can intervene. I'm and now at this point in my life am what I consider an oversharer, and I am proud of that fact that like
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to you about the struggles and the challenges that I've been through, even if I'm like still going through them. Like I still
Mhm.
suffer from anxiety and depression, and my relationship with those things has changed over time. And there's obviously more intense periods and less intense periods. Having a baby is a very intense period of anxiety and depression for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially if you've already been dealing with this before. So, I think what I'm most proud of though is so I just put it out there. Every once in a while, even though I'm not making babies anymore, I'll just be like, "Hey, remember that time I had like debilitating postpartum depression? Like, if you think you are having it or you know someone who is, like, you can call me. Like, I am here
Yeah.
for that." And literally last weekend, my like good friend from home's little sister who just had a baby texted me and was like, "Hey, do you know anything about this sleep trainer?" And her baby is 1 month old. So I'm like, she don't need a sleep trainer. Like something's going on. And so I
Hmm.
like my husband's like, call her right now. So I like called her and I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Like 1 month old babies don't sleep. So having a sleep trainer doesn't really do anything for you. Like, what's up? Like, how's it going? What's happening?
Yeah.
And it was awesome to me that like she couldn't necessarily be like, I'm experiencing something that I think is hard and like, is it just me or is the right? She didn't know what she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And
Right.
so although I don't know that she's experiencing depression, I can be like, hey, no, like here's what you need to look for. Here's what's gonna totally suck. Here's information that people are gonna give you to make you feel bad about yourself. Like F that noise. Like I am here to tell you the real.
Yes. Oh, which is just so refreshing.
Right.
And I mean, again, like that just goes back to the power of community, because yeah, people, and it's so fortunate that people are being more communicative, especially in our generation. But like, I think about my mom who likes to, and she'll never listen to this. So if you do, sorry, mom, but sweeps things under the rugs and like pretends like things are okay and like don't talk about it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you feel less alone. Like the more that you feel as if there's someone that you can reach out to, or that you're, offering your help and guidance to others.
So literally this morning, I was on LinkedIn of all places, and this woman that I found that I follow that I am like obsessed with posted this article about female founders in the menopause space and
Mhm.
how the menopause space is not a niche. But if you're talking to investors, they're like, "Oh, like that's very niche." And it's like, "No, 50% of the population are women and they will all go through menopause. Like that's not a niche business." But it's this similar, thing with like mental illness, with what happens after you have a baby, like women's experiences. We're taught to not talk about them. And right, the
Yeah.
women in the generation before us didn't have safe spaces where they could talk about it. But
Mhm.
now things are changing, but we still have to like be the change we want to see in the world, right? Like
Yes.
I want to start talking about menopause right now because even though that's like maybe 15, 20 years away from me, like I want to know what's coming
Right. Right.
in a way that I didn't know in these other major transitions in my life and
Yeah.
suffered for it.
Right. Right. And I think like to your point about what you said about like not talking about it so that people like will kind of be kept in the dark, like there's the last thing you want is for someone to have a baby and then just to be in utter complete shock on top of the struggles that they're already going through. It's like, oh, I didn't know it would be like this, you know?
And, like,
And
literally, it's, like, the
yeah,
same thing with menopause. Like, mothers are like, "Well,
yeah.
I didn't wanna tell you because maybe it won't happen to you." And it's like, "Well, probably it is gonna happen to me." So, like, "Hello? Tell me."
Yeah, yeah. So going back to the stress management piece, how do you find as if you've worked on that over the years, and where
Yeah.
are you now with it?
Well, I went into, like, super, like, high performing, overachieving mode when I was dealing with my depression of, like, "I'm gonna learn everything. I'm gonna learn how to meditate.
Mhm,
I'm gonna learn all these methodologies. I'm gonna, like, learn everything I can possibly know about how to manage my stress," and I was, like, stressing myself out learning about how to manage my stress. But I did go through a mindfulness-based cognitive therapy course with my therapist. So basically like meditation from a therapist's perspective.
mhm,
So I learned about meditation. I learned about like understanding my emotions and my thoughts and like what are they? And I worked with a meditation teacher. I do have a pretty spotty meditation practice, but it
mm,
exists. I'll have like
mm,
periods where I'm like super awesome and I'm meditating every day. And then I'll have periods that it's like a couple times a week. But in learning how to manage my stress, I'm also learning how to manage my expectations on how I'm going to manage my stress because being stressed about being stressed is not going to help you. So I've
yeah.
learned. Like it's taken me many years to learn this, but I have learned it. And so that's like a main like tool that I have. I mean, I've been through a lot of therapy. I still work with coaches and outside perspective. In COVID times, I've had to really like relook at my stress and like when I'm feeling stressed
Yeah,
and what I do. And I absolutely noticed that the isolation and being alone, even though I consider myself an introvert, like I do need to see other human beings or reach out and
yeah,
have connection and that feeling. That's another way I manage my stress. Like when I'm feeling really stressed, now I realize like I need to phone a friend. Like I need to talk to
yeah,
another person. And that's again another tool that I have to use to manage when I'm not feeling centered or grounded or whatever those words are we like to use, but like in balance, I guess. I don't know what the answer to that
yeah,
is. There's no like
y-
perfect state that I'm trying to achieve by managing my stress, right? Like there's no like
yeah.
this is the relaxed me. Like that person doesn't
Right.
exist. Everything is ebbs
Yeah.
and flows. But when I notice that I'm
Yes.
like really feeling anxious, these are the tools I come back to.
Yeah.
And
No, that's awesome. And
medication.
it,
I almost
yeah.
forgot that one.
Yes.
And I want to
Yes.
say that one because I want it to be like
Good.
documented. Like, also, I take medication to manage my stress and anxiety. And that is a thing I resisted for a very long time because I thought it made me weak or that I'd be dependent, or I had all these other beliefs that I don't even know where they came from about what it meant to be on medication for stress, anxiety, and depression. And then I started taking medication for anxiety and depression. I was like, what was I doing? Putting myself on this struggle bus for no reason. So that's on my list as well.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. And I was talking to someone about this the other day about just like a beautiful marriage of Eastern and Western medicine. I feel like a lot of people, when they're too much in the holistic health side of things, yes, like you said, it's almost as if the Western medicine, like, it becomes this thing to try to avoid at all costs, like that there's something that you can do, or, you can meditate your way out of needing it. But when you can use both, it is can just be such a wonderful thing.
Yeah. I think the thing that I had to learn the most about that is my life is what it is. I live in America. I have family. Like I have all of these things and like that contribute to my lifestyle that I can't meditate my way away from, right? Like I need the support of
Right.
additional tools because I'm not going to like leave everyone and move to a mountain and meditate by a stream every morning and like only
Right.
listen to the sound of gongs. Like that's not realistic for my life. So I need to figure out like what are the tools that I need based on how I want my life to be. Do I need to cut out toxic people that drain my energy? Sure. But like I'm not leaving my whole family and they drain my energy sometimes, let me tell you.
Right.
So, right. It's a balance.
Yes. And I think that that just kind of brings up a really good point about, your external environment versus your internal environment. I was talking to Ellie, who I've had on here, about this yesterday, and just about how when Alex and I went backpacking for 3 months, and we kind of just like transplanted ourselves away from our world here, and just it was a very magical 3 months, and but not the way that the real world works. And we were kind of pinpointing some of the ways that I felt, and that you can bring that inner environment kind of wherever you are. I mean, obviously there's material in your external that can make it more difficult, right? But if that's the work, is to just be like, how do I want to feel in my daily life, and knowing that you have the power and the control to take steps to get there. Easier said than done a lot of the times, but consciousness for it can be more
Yeah.
conducive to creating it, right?
Yeah, and just like realistic expectations, right? Like vacation
Yeah.
vibes are a real thing, right? Like I've read
Hmm.
articles that are like food tastes different on vacation than it does when
Hmm.
you eat it in your life. And like, yes, okay, now that I know that, can I try to create a more vacation like environment when I eat my meals? I mean, sure, you can do that to a degree, but it's never going to be the same as
Yeah.
like if you're
Yeah.
really on vacation.
Yeah.
So do your best.
Right. And so, kind of along those lines, the last thing I want to ask about meditation is, you know, a lot of the times people think that in order to meditate, they have to have like a formal seated practice, which can be really powerful. But just given everything that you've learned about it and your practice in and of itself, do you still find yourself kind of implementing the mindset, the tools, even when you're about your daily life? Like, let's say you're caring for your children and you just have to take a beat and like feel your feet, right? Like, don't you think that that's
Yeah.
effective?
Absolutely, having just mindfulness practices and like
Hmm.
understanding body sensations is helpful. I know for me as a person that really does struggle with anxiety, a seated practice is a different type of anchor, right?
Hmm.
It's like a
Right.
protected time to remember the tools that you have at your disposal versus trying to implement your tools in your life. Like I think of those as two different things that complement each other.
Hmm. Exactly. Okay, so I want to shift gears a little bit to the business side.
Yeah.
And something that you said in your background, I think just illustrates so beautifully you as an example of someone who you were going down a path, right, with business coaching. And because I know you personally, I know that that line of work for you was very in alignment with who you are, but it was not fully aligned with what you wanted to do. And I think that you literally pinpointed the thing that you love and that is such a gift for you in the connections and the networking and being able to connect various people to sort of like I'm a prime example. You've connected me with someone in the community and I was able to write a cookbook out of it. Just things like that that you just have such a talent for. Um, so I just wanted to highlight that and how so many people think that if they're going down a certain path that it must be it, if even if there's like this little voice that's like, oh, this isn't exactly it. So can you talk about that moment where you knew that you wanted to shift gears to do something else besides the business coaching and the position that you were in,
I
and like what
mean,
it took to
you
kind of
make
take
me
that leap?
sound like I did so many things intentionally, which I appreciate that you think that. Well, I mean, what I've learned now, like literally having operated 3 different businesses, is like 2 things. Doesn't matter what you're doing. The thing you start out to do is never the same thing that you're going to end up doing. Like every business evolves and your role in it evolves, and like that's just like the nature of how, especially a service-based business, right? But products too. Like you think you're going to make one type of
Mhm.
product and then this random thing ends up being your bestseller. I mean, I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the first part. There wasn't necessarily like a moment where I was like, this is how I'm going to use all of my talents and interests and gifts to like make money and support people I care about. Like that would be awesome
Yeah.
if that's how it went down. It was more of a, I enjoy coaching. It's definitely still like a part of just how I operate in the world, but I was becoming depleted by taking on the problems of all of my clients because I'm a very
Mm.
empathetic person. So like I feel like I'm struggling to run 7 businesses now because I have 7 clients, even though like I'm not actually doing that. I'm just meeting with
Oh
them
my
once a
gosh. Yeah.
week. So like that energetic like drain was definitely felt like after the first couple of years of primarily working one-on-one coaching clients. And so I was looking at kind of my options, right? Like I can do what other coaches do, which is like package up services or do group programs or create a course or, what are the other ways that people that are in similar things do, or I can kind of go this totally different direction. And so after we did, I guess it was like 3 or 4 conferences, I can't really remember. I was like, I think that I can figure out a way to like grow this to replace the
Mm.
money that I made before. I wasn't at the place that it had grown to replace my coaching income. And I wasn't like, if I have more time, it's going to explode. Like, I wasn't in either of those camps. I was more of just like,
Hmm.
I think I'm willing to like sacrifice some money now to try to pursue this other thing and see how it goes. I think what I've learned in the last year is everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. And so, again, my expectations have kind of shifted on like, what do I want my role to be now versus what was it when I was like literally just trying to create my dream job? Like, I'm kind of out of that mode now, right? Which I think a lot of service providers start there. You're like, what am I good at? What can I get people to pay me for? And you kind of start there.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
then I'm at this place now of like, okay, I know I'm good at these things, but I'd really like this not to be the thing that I spend my time doing in this business. And so that's kind of where I'm
Hmm.
right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, kind of thinking back on it and how much Rebelle Con exposed you to various entrepreneurs who would, probably pay hand and foot to have you as their business coach. Did you have to say no a lot to that in order to kind of stay in that alignment that you had found with the conferences?
I don't know that I had to do it a lot because I think what people like about working with me is that I can make them feel like they can accomplish whatever it is that they want to accomplish,
Hmm.
right? Like I think that's one of my gifts as a coach of like I can make you see the potential in you that you maybe can't see. And I still get to do that as part of Rebel.
Yeah.
I did have a member of the community a couple weeks ago be like, "Hey, are you taking clients anymore?" And I was like, tempting, so tempting, but no.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
encouraged her to join one of our swell programs because I've talked to her and really what she needs is community, not a coach. And I think
Mm.
that was also what I was finding when I was coaching of like, your things that you're going through, you just need someone to listen to that and like validate your feelings. Like, you know what you're doing. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think the community piece comes in. And oftentimes, right, we hire a coach when really what we need is a community.
Yeah. So that is the perfect segue to talk more about the power of community, especially as it pertains to health, because we've touched on this, but it has not been as regarded as a facet of, one's wellness regime, if you will. But I think it's getting more recognized as being very important, especially now with COVID. So can you talk a little bit more about the importance of community, both kind of like in the general sense and
Yeah.
for you personally?
Well, I think the reason why community is not really discussed as part of wellness is because it's not easy to like sell you something to solve, right?
Mm.
Like, I can sell you a food or a workout regimen or this product. I can't really sell you friends. I mean, I'm trying, but like it's harder to do. So, so I think that's why. But right, I do think COVID has made people understand just the value of connectedness because they haven't been able
Mm.
to have it. But, this was a core part of what we're doing from the beginning. And what I was seeing even at that time was people don't belong anymore. There is, just frightening numbers of the decline in participation in organized religion. And like, I don't care what religion you practice or don't practice. I think what people don't realize is that source of community and feeling of connectedness within where you live was really important, and we got
Yeah.
confused and we're like, "No, I just don't wanna hear this message, or I don't wanna be associated with this particular thing," and it's like, "No, no, like, you just spending time with other people that aren't exactly like you is really important."
Yeah.
And social media has this way of, like, feeling like we're connected, but with algorithms, you are only gonna see other people that think like you think and have experiences like you have, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
So what I didn't realize when I was going through my own health crisis is I did not have a community. Like, I had friends that I would like hang out with. I had my husband, I have family, but I didn't have like a core group of people that I could call for whatever reason, like something important or something not important. We don't invest in friendships the way we invest in our career or our health even. Like, it's just not high on the priority list for whatever reason. I'm sure there's like plenty of social studies that can tell you why. I don't actually know. But what I found for myself is once I started building that for myself, once I had this core group of people that I could call for anything, like a light bulb went off in my head of like, "Oh my god, like I didn't realize I was missing this until I had it."
Mhm.
And so that
Mm.
has been kind of my driving force and why I'm trying to promote what we're doing more and get more people to realize that this is important. You don't realize you don't have it until you have it,
Yeah.
oftentimes.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that I had the chance to build this for myself pre-COVID because that
Yeah.
has been one of the core things that have gotten me through of just having someone outside of a relationship that I'm a person I'm married to or a person in my family that I can call and be like, shit is cray. Like, I need you to listen to me talk for however long until I calm
Yeah.
down. And then being like, yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um, Having your feelings validated by another human. Oh, I mean, this is why
Mhm.
we go to therapy, right? But
Right.
I think that also like goes back to the same thing of like you might need community over a coach. Like, I mean, everybody needs therapy, but you might just need other people that you get to share your feelings with. Like, that might be
Yeah.
the really big thing that's missing for you. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do.
It
So,
really is. Especially in like a society that individualism um, has just it's been so carved out, right? And even kind of listening to you talk, I mean, I think for me, my issue personally has always been trust, especially when it comes to other women,
yeah.
because I have experiences in my past where that trust was broken, or I got hurt by very close friends. Um, And, not to say that I was a saint by any means, but it can be tough as women because women can be ruthless. And I have a big problem with that. And I think, but, Rebelle Con was one prime example of a time where I didn't feel like that because it was just so supportive.
Yeah. Well, and Sarah, it's not your fault that you feel that way because we're socialized that way. Like,
Yeah.
we're socialized to be individualists. We're socialized to not trust each other. We're socialized to have this idea that, like, there's only so much room for us. So we're all competing against each other. But I would
Yeah.
share that, like, we have bad experiences in romantic relationships and we then carry that baggage with us. But, like, we don't stop pursuing that in the same way that, like, we opt out of having friends. And I don't
Yeah.
really know why that is, but it's a thing. And
Probably biological more than anything.
it's possible. I I don't know. I think I have been very fortunate to meet the women that I am friends with at the time in my life that I was ready to know them. And I think that's another
Mhm.
piece too, right? You do have to do work on yourself before you can have relationships with other people, no matter what kind of relationships they are. And that's what
Very
we're
true.
doing at Rebelle. And so I think that's why that the feeling is different of like, we're all here to work on ourselves so that we can be better supports for each other. Like that's really at the
Hmm.
core of what we're doing. And
Yeah.
I hope that I set the example and so does our team of like this is how we treat each other so that there's not that competition or distrust or feeling as if someone's trying to get something from you without giving back in return.
Yeah. So after, or kind of while and after kind of building this for yourself, how has your own personal health changed?
I mean,
How
I
has it?
lived through COVID. I don't know how that
Yeah.
happened. I mean, this has been a really stressful and challenging year from
Yeah.
all angles. I don't know that I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I definitely can't say that. But I am not suffering in a way that I have before. So
Mm.
I consider these people just as important in my health practices as I do my meditation, as I do all of the other components. So,
Yeah. And that was kind of my next question was how has your level of happiness changed? Because health and happiness always go hand in hand for me. And um, I kind of heard you say it, that the past year has been very stressful and there's a lot of days and times where it was hard to feel happy. But I guess what I'm hearing you say is just being able to have this community kind of mitigated the negativity as much as it could.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm not striving for happy anymore. I again, like
Mm-hmm.
it's all about like resetting expectations. Like
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to just like be fulfilled and be as present as I can, right? Like absolutely I'm going to feel happy
Love that.
sometimes. Absolutely I'm going to feel sad sometimes. I'm going to be super stressed sometimes cuz that's like my go-to. And sometimes I'm going to be on vacation and I'm going to be like, this tastes delicious, whatever it is that I'm eating, because food tastes better on vacation. So I think that's
It
more
all
what I'm
comes full
shooting
circle. Yeah.
for. Yes. um, right. Just like I don't like the word balance, but that is more what it is, right? I'm just trying to find
Mhm.
like a baseline that I can like wave above and below versus like seeking enjoyment all day every day is just not
Yeah.
realistic for me.
Yeah. Well, that's very real and raw to hear. And I'm sure that many people are nodding, hearing you say that. So I think that's amazing advice. And so, what would you tell somebody who's, looking for more of a sense of community and kind of doesn't really know where to turn to, especially now in this COVID world?
Yeah. I mean, obviously I want to plug the Rebelle community that you
Of
should come join
course.
us because we're so cool. But no, I mean there's other ways too. I mean, not everybody's a joiner, right? Not everybody wants to be a part of something that's like an organized community, but you can reach out and connect with other people. I've actually been talking about this a lot lately. I think it's hard to meet new people anyway. COVID makes it like even harder, but
Mhm.
reconnecting with people that you knew in the past can be a great way to start building community, or asking people to introduce you to other people. Like those are
Mhm.
two pretty easy ways to just get out there. But remember, like, it is kind of like dating. Like, you have to find your people. It takes time. I would say it took me like probably 2 years to like really build solid relationships with a core group, right? I think that was another motivation for us creating Swell of like, we're going to kind of like just set you up, and it's like a blind dating service for friends. But right, like that's not on everyone's radar or possibility for everyone to be able to show up in that way. But you can reconnect with people you knew before that maybe you've lost touch with, and you can ask people to introduce you to other people that they think you would get along with.
Yeah. And especially now, like, I don't even think that that is like, even if it's someone you haven't talked to in years, like, I just feel as if this time is causing us to want to reconnect with people. And what you said earlier about being an introvert, I mean, right there with you, like, I had to say no a lot. There was a lot of, weekend days where I just like wanted to be by myself. And I think that it almost has kind of swung us in the other direction, because the majority of the time we were introverts kind of doing extroverted things, because that's just the way the world works, right? And especially when we're business women and around other people and putting ourselves out there. So you had to kind of really carve out that time for yourself. But when now the world is more of you're by yourself, now you have to kind of carve out time to be just a little bit more extroverted,
It's
which
true.
it's kind
It's
of funny
true.
how that has flipped. Yeah.
So back in pre-COVID times, we did this workshop for the Rebelle community where we had this like really awesome woman named Carrie Sue come and teach us this sticky note brainstorming technique. She used to work at the Pentagon, and
Mm,
this is like a brainstorming process that people would use to like solve problems. She's like, but you need a problem or a thing that you're trying to solve to be able to learn the technique. So we picked the problem of making friends as an adult, right? And so we had like 50 people
it's a good
come to
one.
this workshop, and we all crowdsourced like what it really takes to like make a friend as an adult. And the two things that I remember from this workshop that like stuck in my mind so much, like one was repetition. Like you have to meet people more than once for there to be a relationship developing, right? Like, and you have
Hmm.
to initiate it and you have to follow up. So it's like, it's just again, just like dating, like you have to spend more than one time with them to be friends with them.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other one was vulnerability. And the metaphor that
Mm,
kind of came out of it, or I don't even know if it's a metaphor, or example that came out of it was if you clean your house before you invite someone to come over, that's not really like friendship, right? The friend you want to come over is the one that you come over when my house is messy. But like you
yeah.
kind of have to start at that place. Like you don't necessarily want to be a full on oversharer like I am, right? Because I think that can scare people. But like you have to be willing to let people see a little bit of your mess if they're going to get to know you well enough to be your friend. And
Yes.
so those are the things that we facilitate in our groups, but those are things you can do even without joining something. So
Yeah. And I
those are
think
my
as an adult, that's probably why it's a little bit more difficult, because I feel like people need to feel as if they need to put up a wall or portray themselves in a certain way where like people can sense that. Like if I, and I tend to be an overshare too, hands down. And if I was trying to make a friend to somebody who was just like putting on this front, and that's not the way I operate, like you don't get attracted to that as
Mhm.
much.
Yep.
Yeah.
It
So I
takes
think that's what,
longer for like a bond to be formed. So
yeah, for sure. So getting into more RebelleCon stuff a little bit,
yeah.
especially since you have come into contact with so many amazing women, and that all conferences touch on the subjects of creativity and money and wellness, being a big facet. So after however many conferences you've led and however many speakers you've heard talk, kind of how has your idea of wellness evolved over the years?
Yeah. Well, I think the people that I'm most inspired by are the people that wouldn't pick them out of a lineup and be like, that's a wellness professional, right?
Mm,
Because what I've recognized is being well, it means different things to different people. Like
mhm,
being healthy also doesn't have a true definition that can be measured by metrics, right?
mhm,
I think that's been the biggest challenge, right? For people to like figure it out for themselves. And also, it's why people always feel like they don't measure up, right?
mhm,
So, health is not a destination. We talk about that, right? Like there's not like I do X, Y, and Z and now I'm healthy, right? It's a thing that
mhm,
you are working towards and working on all the time. And not to say that like there's you shouldn't set goals for yourself or do things that you know make you feel good. It just means like there's not a prescription. There's not someone that they can meet you and be like, "Hey, you need to do XYZ and then you'll be well." Like that doesn't
mhm.
exist because there are so many
Right.
complicated components. And so I appreciate wellness professionals that are like, "I don't know everything. I don't know everything
Mhm.
about you. I'm not going to be able to fix you with a formula." And it's rare to find them, but we do find them,
Yeah.
especially for Rebelle. Those are kind of the only people we will have anymore, um,
Yeah.
because, yeah, it means something different to everyone.
Yeah. And I think that's such a powerful point. And, I know that is what kind of made health coaching for me very difficult and draining. Even though I'm still very passionate about the education side, and Healthified and Gratified allow me to do that. So it's like almost like I found my ideal platform in that way. But with health coaching, like so many people would come to me just looking for that prescription or wanting me to tell them the formula for what it meant to be healthy or how much to eat, and when to eat. And I just kept on reiterating, like, I can't tell you that. But it's so foreign to people. And that's why they look outside themselves and to others for that suggestion, because so many people don't know that they have to tune into themselves. Because again, that can come back to a lack of self-trust or just unknowing. And, it can be, it's just such a journey for people to just have to, bring it
Well,
back to, yeah.
and sadly, like the wellness industry and just wellness in general is another place that we think we can have control, right? So if I can just
Yes.
control what I eat and control how much I'm moving and control X and control Y and have all these perfect pieces of this formula in this place, like then I'll have XYZ result that also is probably not connected to what you actually want, right? Like it's often these like external things that we're shooting for and then we're calling it wellness. And it's like, no, like
Yes.
being thin doesn't mean being well. Owning a fitness studio and being in good physical shape doesn't mean you're healthy. Like
Right.
there's so many just unspoken things going on, and our society rewards people for looking a certain way versus feeling a certain way. And so
Yes.
you have to decide for yourself like how which you're going to put your, money on, time on, energy on. And right, as a health coach, I would imagine it's really challenging because probably everyone needed to go to therapy for a long time before they got to you, but they just go straight
Yes.
to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I was like, you don't need a health coach, you need a therapist. Like, not said in like a condescending
Yes.
way or anything, but I was like, I'm not
Yeah,
a licensed therapist. And a lot of it too was like food relationships and exactly what you said,
totally.
control. And I mean, I saw it in myself over the past year, even with
Oh,
COVID, like when there was so much anxiety and uncertainty, especially from a business perspective, I knew what I was doing because I have such consciousness for it. So many people don't have consciousness that that's what they're trying to do. But
mhm.
I saw myself wanting to like up my exercise routine and like needing to do all this hit and like told my husband we were going completely plant-based for months. And I saw it and I was like, no. And it took me weeks to be like, you're not
Yeah.
here anymore. You're not doing this anymore. This is not the way that you operate anymore. So,
Yeah.
um,
Man, COVID will bring back all the bad habits, right?
yeah. So,
But then the
yeah.
awareness brings you back, right? And I think that's
Yes.
that's really what I hope that people who attend Rebel and participate in our programs get to a place that they just have more awareness and they can make their own choices from there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about COVID. And, we've obviously touched on it throughout the whole conversation, but I would say kind of what lessons have you majorly learned? What have been your silver linings, if any? And how did you really have to pivot, that buzzword these days of everyone pivoting in some way, shape, or form?
Well, we had to change everything. Like we had to change our entire business model. So we were getting ready to host the largest conference we had ever had with
No,
big
I was going.
and it was going to be really great. And we had big plans. So we had to cancel the conference. We moved it virtual, which I was really proud of. A foundation of what we were doing was meeting in person. So we really did have to change everything. I had to get more clear on like, what do we even do for people? Because producing an event that people can come to is the action, but like, what is that doing for people? And that's where we really discovered really what we're doing is creating connections and community for people. We knew it before.
I can't hear you.
We did it. Oh,
Sorry, guys, we lost the sound.
still no? Am I gone? No?
We'll be right back. Technical difficulty. All right, guys, we tried, but we've lost the sound for Shannon. So we're just going to close out. At least, this happened 30 minutes ago. And we got so much great stuff. And hopefully you learned a lot about community and wellness. And I just want to kind of end this conversation and highlight where you can find Shannon. One of the major ways that she had to pivot over the past year was starting a podcast. So you can find it on iTunes. It is called Rule Breaker by Rebelle. You can find her on her website, readytorebel.com. I am personally a member of the community, so I just want to sing its praises. It's an amazing organization. And like Shannon said, she also started Swell this year, which is another option for you. And so if you're a woman, this is a great place to turn to. If you are a female entrepreneur, it is a great place to turn to. So would just definitely want to send you in her direction. And Shannon, thank you so much for joining. For those that are listening and not watching, she is sitting there waving and blowing a kiss. So just really appreciate your time. And I know we will connect again soon. All right. Have a good rest of the day, my dear. Talk to you later. Thank you.